My name is Alan Kett. You are
Mike
at
Miller.
the
Oh, sorry.
Art of Hip Hop. And the Art of Hip Hop is a space dedicated to the creatives behind hip hop culture. Folks like Mike Miller, who's here with us tonight. Mike, thank you for being here. Everybody, please give a round of applause for Mike Miller. Mike is a world-renowned photographer that has been shooting images from fashion to surf to skate to hip-hop and other forms of music for many decades now, and so it's a big honor for us to have him here. He is based in Los Angeles or somewhere on the West Coast, and so it's an honor to have him here with us in Miami. It just kind of worked out for us, and Mike's work is on display here. If you haven't seen it, there's beautiful black and white images that sort of chronicle some of his work over the past 30 or so years. And so the point of tonight's conversation is really to jump into your world and into the body of work that you've created over so many years. And so, I read many interviews on you and kind of know your story, but for those of members of the audience that don't know your story, what initially attracted you to photography?
Well, hello everyone. Great to be here. Okay. Well, early on, I had a girlfriend. She was a model, so she got me shooting photos. Some of my friends were just like my friend. He's still my friend today. He became a big model, so I started building portfolios. I did street stuff, and photography was like escapism for me. I had my dad had a scrapyard right outside of Compton, and I don't think he really wanted me there, but I worked there anyways. And my brothers were getting into trouble, going to jail, gang stuff, and I think photography was just a way for me to escape, my escapism. So I built a portfolio, and after the first year, my agent started getting me work. So I had no idea that like album covers were like, that was like a pipe dream. I had no idea that you can do that for a living. So I just started building a portfolio, and I got an agent, and my agent started getting me, like my first cover was like the Go-Go's, the Graces, there's the band, and then like Herb Alpert and Stan Getz, and yeah, so she knew I liked hip hop, and she went after the record labels and presented someone that was into the genre back in 1987.
87?
Yeah.
So let's go back, I think your story is a little sexier than that, right? Because you were a surfer, skater at some point.
Yeah.
Then, you have fashion friends. You go to Paris before 87.
Yep.
So you go to Paris
With my model girlfriend.
with your model girlfriend. So you're one of those guys.
I'm one of those guys that just kind of tagged along and then figured out how to like survive. I started painting houses in Paris, and I'm not an artist, but I painted houses pretty good. I learned when I was a kid, and yeah, that's how it started.
So it started really for you in Paris. Or were you shooting photos before that?
I don't think I would have become a photographer with the style I have if I wasn't in Europe. Like paying attention, like I'd do anything. I'd go on shoots. I'd do whatever they wanted me to do. If they wanted me to model or which didn't happen that often.
Were you a good looking guy?
I was, maybe, according to me. No. I'd pay attention, to all the setups. I'd be lucky enough to be on a couple really like amazing shoots,
As an assistant or
assistant, whatever they wanted me
right.
to do, you know, craft
lighting,
service,
whatever,
anything and everything.
So I think that's a really important note to, for everybody to realize that most photographers don't just have a big break. They start off working behind the scenes, trying to get in, like you did, to a set, to maybe meet people, to then maybe meet the photographer, to assist the photographer, etc. So you're in Paris and you're starting to make those moves.
So yeah, basically, my first roll of film, I went to London. I was shooting street stuff. There was a guy that looked like Einstein. It's on my Instagram. It's like you can go through it, and there was a profile of him. I took one frame of him selling newspapers, and he looked at me weird, and I was like, okay, whatever, and I just moved on. Then I shot a girl in her apartment, and those photos got the attention of agents in Paris. So then they started paying me to photograph their models.
Got it. So you were working for the modeling agencies.
For the modeling agencies, and I started building a fashion portfolio.
Got it. So the young models that are coming up, they're getting signed. You're shooting them. You're working behind the scenes, making your connections.
I've worked with like my first camera came from Linda Evangelista, and so I was with a lot of these supermodels before they were supermodels. So it was pretty cool to have the opportunity to shoot beautiful women and good-looking men. It was a combination.
And how long were you in Paris? I wanted to stay.
I was in Paris. I went to Paris for about 6 months to a year. Then I went to Barcelona for about 6 months, and that's where I honed in on my technique on cross-processing, like different chemical baths for black and white. Like I experimented a lot, and I created my own style. So when I came back to the States, I had a portfolio that was unique to pretty much nobody had this. Like now you see a lot of it like when you put C41 film and E6, it's a little techie stuff, E6 and C41. Like I'd put C41 film, shoot it at 50 ISO, it was 100 ISO, and push it 3 stops, and I'd figure out all these crazy techniques, and that's just the way my mind worked, so I was being technically schooled by myself and people in Barcelona.
So experimenting, and you came over your look, and so that look that you figured out of those techniques, when you came back, you were able to find an agent.
Which was tough, but I got signed by an agency, Herbert's agency called Visage, and there was a music agent. My first job was like 3 ads in Vogue, which was really fortunate. But the music department said, oh, this guy's not gonna work.
Is it because of your fashion book, or?
Because it was fashion, it was so weird. My cross-processing was like so saturated and so like heavy, the colors and just the technique that I was doing, nobody was used to it. But I remember she got a letter from the art director at Chuck Beeson at A&M Records, and saying, we're gonna hire this guy. And then Capitol Records, Tommy Steele, hired me for my first job, was for Roger Troutman's son, Lynch. So that was my first cover for Capitol Records. So it wasn't like a flood of work came my way, but I photographed, after A&M wrote my agent, I photographed Herb Alpert's album cover, Abstract Heart, Stan Getz's album cover. Herb called me at home. I was telling Paula earlier that Herb called me at home, and that was like, yes, like, is this Mike Miller? Yes, hold for Herb Alpert. He's like, you're my photographer from now on. Like from Herb Alpert, I was just like, holy shit, like this is going somewhere. I was in shock.
How old were you at the time?
I was like 25, 26.
That's a big deal.
It's huge.
Huge deal.
Or I'd be working driving a Mack truck for my dad, and that's the reality of it. Going back to escapism, like I wanted to do something different from my brothers getting in trouble and my dad working, in a scrapyard.
Yeah.
Where I shot a lot of album covers, by the way. Later on in life, I shot Coolio's first cover, Cypress Hill's first cover, Quick's cover there, Thug Life went there, Tupac, a lot of people went to that scrapyard.
So
should be a landmark.
So it's funny. So you get into you get an agent, you get into the business. They start shopping you around, right? And you start landing these jobs. what were those, you mentioned the Go-Go, Revolver. What was the first rap job that you landed?
Okay, so I think Ice Cube, I met through my friend Skate Master Tate. He was a producer. He did Booyah Tribe and James Addiction. He gave beats to Cypress and all those people. Arabian Prince was my first cover for EMI Records. Henry Marquez hired me. And that was in '88. He just left NWA. He produced a lot of that first album, Straight Outta Compton. And on the back of that cover, it's a really cool cover. I really like it. It's through my dad's, one of the walls were all broken windows. And I had him up on a ladder, and that was the cover. And the back was my old '64 Buick on the back, with a sign that said Compton 1 mile, Southgate 2 miles, and Inglewood 4 miles. I gave him that film. Like, I was so naive back in the early days. Thank God that I had agents looking out for me, where they had in the contracts saying that there's no buyout, no merch included. It's not like that today, but I was able to own all my film.
From the beginning?
From the beginning.
So that shoot, it's yours?
It's mine.
Incredible. Yeah. I think, is it up there? It might even be up there.
Oh, yeah. There's Cypress's cover in my dad's junkyard, or scrapyard. Coolio's cover right there in the bob wire. I just put him up on a ladder. Where are you? There it is. Arabian Prince, Broken Wind. It's on this end, underneath Mellow Man Ace and above Sugar Free.
So that's, just for you folks in the audience to see, that's a lot of records. That's a lot of work. And that's not all of it. That's just a nice sort of a grid of the work that you've done. What, you were mentioning your style and kind of your processing and the saturation. I think that, you mentioning, your father's scrapyard is an interesting note, because I think in looking at your work, there's sets or locations or something that really distinguishes what you're doing from other people that are just maybe going straight to the studio and going to the site. What was that like for you, or what were you trying to bring to the table with that?
I found collaborating with artists, they wanted to go on the street, so I'd show them Polaroids, and it wasn't only at my dad's scrapyard, but I would be dropped. I can go to Miami, like I did for Moneybag Yo, and he's up there in the corner, and search out locations. That's just what I like. So I'd show the art, I'd collaborate with the artists, and so, yeah, was that kind of on point?
Yeah. So you're scouting.
Yes.
Is it something that you're constantly doing anyway? You're thinking about it, you just see a spot and you just kind of...
Especially with the iPhone, and you have stories and you got to be relevant. I'm always oh shit, there was a red, there was whatever, it's always content. And that's, thank you to my wife, Shannon. She's, my wife Shannon was the stylist on a lot of the shoots, and she also has a great eye. So with Tupac, the Thug Life shoot, she picked the hubcap shot, and and she also did the wardrobe for him, and kept my stuff authentic. She didn't. It wasn't flossy back then, and it's a little more. I try to keep my stuff timeless.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like when we go back and start looking at these photos, whether it's Cypress or House of Pain, Q, Tupac, it seems like it's them. It's not, although it might be staged, you caught something that became either the look of the artist or it actually was the artist. Was it them? Was it you? How did that come together?
Well, if they weren't into the spot, it'd bounce. It wasn't like I forced people to do stuff they didn't want to do. Photography is a tricky thing. It's you have to be technical, and you got to know what you're doing, and you got to light stuff and make it look cool at any time of the day. For instance, Warren G's cover, his first cover, Regulate. He told me he wanted to go to his neighborhood where he grew up. Snoop grew up there, Dog Pound grew up there. It's all in Long Beach. So I found the spot 21st and Lewis. His house is right by there. And it was in the perfect time of the day, but you know, I scouted out locations around there, and that made it authentic to what he wanted. Sometimes it's not the case. They just like my style, and then on the other hand, and on top of that, you have to be personable. You got to be able to like connect with someone in like a matter of seconds, like minutes. After, you know, right away, there's a lot of pressure on a photographer to get what the label wants. The label wants like 5 to 10 looks. They want each look to look like a different day. You know, the artists are busy. They don't have time to do these photo shoots. A lot of them don't like doing these photo shoots. So you really have to make most of the time that you have with.
So, you know, you have to be a people person.
Gotta be a good person.
Right? And then I would imagine, so early on, you're doing all these shoots are starting to come. Your style starts to change a bit, I'm guessing, right? Because the subject's a bit different, it's more street, it's West Coast. You start to sort of, I feel like, become one of the go-tos with hip hop, with rap. You're the guy. So did it get easier because everybody's like, yo, we want a perfect mic? Or did that ever happen where it was like you had to be the guy on the shoot?
Well, there was ebbs and flows, and you know, it was like everything was going real great. You know, by the way, in '91 I met my wife, I had a kid, so I kind of left the scene. I mean, early on I met like Pac in the clubs and all that stuff. But, so people started copying my style and like my film technique, so I started changing in that way. My photography has always stayed the same. It's been consistent till today. I only get better now. Like Gary Clark Jr. was my last shoot, and I'm just like on point because we have digital, we have all this great lighting. You just got to keep me working. So what I was gonna say is Napster's what fucked me up.
Okay, explain.
That when Napster came out, it was the starting of streaming music. And the record labels, like I was working for 40 different record labels, and they all went bankrupt. It was like a cancer in the music industry.
Right,
so
music.
Everything went under. So that killed my career. And so it was hard. So I started, you know, going back to the scrapyard and doing like catalogs. Still did fashion. You know, I did Stussy early on, and I worked for Champion and a few other iconic brands. But it was some rough years, you know. So like before Napster, everything was pretty smooth, and then when that hit, I don't remember, it was '98 or something like that. Oh, it was just brutal. And also I was living up in Topanga Canyon. I just got, you know, I'd like Coolio or Dub C or people just come up the hill, boom, boom, just shake the whole street, and you know, to talk about the album covers we'd be focusing on.
So let's talk about some of those album covers. So many of these are you know, classic, iconic covers that, you know, sold millions of records. You know, multiple. You know, it's incredible. And so I'm looking at Coolio, and a lot of these artists that you work with, or a few of these artists that you work with, are no longer living, which, you know, it's so tragic. So let's talk a little bit about Coolio, whose images are up there in the Art of Hip Hop in the back as well. What was it like working with him? How did you connect with Coolio?
All the musicians I work with, Coolio was probably the one I connected with the most. Him and Tupac were like really comfortable in front of the camera, so they're easy to get along with and great for my work. But Coolio, like I first met him on Dub C in the Mad Circle. Next to Coolio with the bob wire he's in the back with a baseball helmet on. And so like, you know, Coolio and we worked on many projects. That was the first one. Then he came to my door. We went to each other's houses. I've seen all his houses he lived in, and we just connected on another level. We were friends. And I remember him knocking on my door, at my apartment, and he had the hair up for the first time, and I was just like, oh shit, Star is Born. And we went down to my dad's junkyard and shot the cover, that cover right there, and I did his wedding. I don't shoot weddings, but I shot his wedding. We did Gangster's Paradise. And I just reconnected with him before he passed away. Sad, because he was probably one of the more scarier dudes that I met, but he was also the sweetest at the same time. You know, like I said, we connected.
Tell me a little bit about connecting with pop and working with pop.
Evolving in hip hop, like going to clubs where hip hop artists hung out or A&R people. That's part of the reason I started getting hired in hip hop. Not only was I a fan from way back in the day, but I was still like, that was my favorite, you know, like it was like, I was so happy to get those jobs early on. So I met Pac through Casualty at Water the Bush, and he said he liked my Stussy campaign. And then a street promoter turned A&R, Fade Duvernay. Fade was Tupac's A&R at Interscope. He goes, Mike, Tupac wants to work with you. I'm like, oh, please, you know, because he was at the height of his career doing movies, and you know, to get an album cover with Tupac would be like a dream. So a year later, he came around and he goes, so Tupac called me and said, meet me at my condo by this place called Runyon Park in LA. And we sat down, I showed him Polaroids that me and my wife scouted like the week before. And he dug it. And he was telling me how important this album was, because it was his crew. He was able to get a record deal for his, you know, Mopreme and Rated R, Big Psych, Macadocious, all, you know, his crew. So it was really important to him. So he really like gave it up. But he made sure his crew was doing the same.
So that shoot is sort of that alley shoot. Where was that shoot?
Okay.
The
The Hubcaps was on in South Central LA at 50th and Western area. It was hot, you know, it was a hot neighborhood for sure. And then my dad's junkyard was down the street, a few miles, and we stopped there. Then we went to where the double flip off, it's not up there. The profile one is.
One of them is here, right here. Oh, yeah. One of them is the profile.
Oh, the profile's right here. And and the double flip-offs in here somewhere. Oh, so it was just it's in the train yard that it's still there. There it is. And this image, like there's an Eazy-E skateboard shot back there, and I had that, like I was skateboarding in Eazy's parking lot shooting for The Source, for Rappers in the Rides. And then Eazy saw me skating, he popped his trunk and he pulled out a deck. It happened to be one of my good friend Nadas Kapas's decks, and that chrome was sitting in my archives for 20 years. Yeah, I mean, and some of these Tupac shots, I did the cover, and they've got, like the cover of my book, West Coast Hip Hop History and Pictures, is long gone. You can't get it anymore, but he's smiling on the cover. I didn't know I had that. So like, I have something I'm working on now, and I have more shots of Pac, like so personable and so like charismatic. That's the way he was. And then he called me after this shoot, and the label wanted me to go in a studio to get some clean shots. So I got some really cool clean shots that I don't really show that often, because I like my street stuff more.
So when you're shooting these album covers, the label wants, like you said, 5 shots.
5 to 10 looks, yeah.
5 to 10 looks, right?
Yeah.
You're turning in what? Just, you know, for people to understand that process.
Well,
contact sheets,
yeah.
Selections, how?
No, I make duplicates of the contacts, and I'll send in, like, each setup, I'll shoot usually 2 rolls, maybe a roll of 35, which takes a long time to, you know, and film is way slower than digital. Digital, you can be like, pop up, pop up, got it, boom, boom, done. Or like with strobe and with digital pop, you get it, you see it, you're done, you know. But with film, you really take your time and you really like capture, compose, and you don't just like, you know, so I'd give them like 50, 60 rolls. Yeah.
It's a lot of rolls.
A lot of rolls. And when you're looking through your camera and Pac's playing craps and slapboxing, and you're like going, holy shit, this is like a movie I'm looking through, and trying to snap and hoping the exposure's right, and like, oh my God, the pressure I had that day.
So,
And he was sitting shotgun with me, cruising through LA the whole trip, just passing the blunt with me. It was so cool, man. I mean, Tupac was like, him and Biggie were at the top of the game, and those are the two people. I photographed Chuck D and Public Enemy, so they're off my wishing to shoot list.
Yes.
But Biggie's still on it, but that's not gonna happen. But I love Biggie.
So 50, 60 rolls of pictures. How many hours? Let's say that shoot.
Probably like 12 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. Yeah, Tupac, but that was Tupac. He really had a great work ethic, and he was doing it for when we were in the studio, it was probably like 5 hours. And that's, setting up, breaking it down.
What was your team like? How many people did you have?
I usually have like 3 people.
Okay.
Rick's helped me here in Miami. Who do we do? Tiny? Yeah, we did Tiny and a few other reggaeton artists.
All day.
Yeah, all day. Yeah, all day. 2 days.
So 3 people, 12-hour days,
Yeah.
60 rolls.
Yeah.
The label picks 5 images.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty
Maybe.
much.
Maybe.
It's hard to edit.
Hard edit.
So like when you go back 20 years later and you're going, oh shit, he's playing craps and smiling on this shot, you're like,
But no one ever picked it.
nobody ever did that.
That wasn't used.
No.
So you're sitting on all these albums. You're sitting on hundreds of images from each shoot, maybe, right? That no one's ever seen.
There's a shot of Quick in the back there. He's looking through a rear view mirror at my dad's scrapyard. That's the tower where Arabian's sitting in, Arabian Prince sitting in. And that shot, I just found it like maybe 6-7 years ago. Nobody used it. And I shot it in '94. So that shot, it's like one of my favorite shots I've ever taken. I didn't even know I had it until I went back and looked. I made a book, and that shot didn't even make it in my book.
So, if you were to go back and, all these shoots that you've done, what were some of those other standout shoots where you're like connected with the artist, created a great image, or many, and images that no one's ever seen? You're like, wow, I can't believe that I'm sitting on these gems.
I don't know, Warren G had some good ones. There was this car shoot for the NWA 10-year anniversary cover.
So some of these people you shot at the very, very beginnings of their career.
Yeah.
Babies in the game.
Yeah.
And they become international superstars. I mean, Cypress Hill is an example.
Yeah.
You shot their very first record, maybe their single, I don't know the single, but their first album.
The only cover with them on the cover.
Right.
And their singles, Pistol Grip Pump, Hand on the Pump, Latin Ling. I shot their demo at my dad's scrapyard, put a trash can on fire, and we got them signed with Joe the Butcher, Rough House Records.
Yep.
And then Sony hired me to do the first album cover, where that was my style. Like everything was very clean, and like 783, if you look at Muggs' first group, everything's just like, super clean and really portrait. That's what the record labels wanted. The record labels never showed up on my shoots. Very rarely they did. And we had a fight for that like non-face recognition on the cover, like on the demo that we shot.
Right, because it's far away. The shot is.
Yeah, it's up there.
Yeah.
Then that's my dad's scrapyard with their hands with the trash can, and then that's in my garage. Just I put up some red gels. It was a tight little cool garage, all cement dilapidated. Yeah, and then there's some shots of King T that I just came across. There's some shots of Dub C in the Mad Circle on Skid Row. I should have a stick. It's right up there next to Coolio. they wanted a census worker to count homeless on Skid Row, and Skid Row was it was on Los Angeles and 3rd. So we went the night before, and we got the pass, and I found a couple rolls of everybody posing for me.
Wow.
And I just found them like 10 years ago, and I had no idea. And I found, like, early on in my career, my friend Tate, he took me to, he was working with Ice-T. Took me in 1988, I have the bill on my phone. I don't have it up here. I'll show you guys if you ask me later. I went to a show at the Universal Amphitheater. It was Ice-T. I walk in the door and there's Biz Markie on a mic, and I took a frame of him. And then I took Ice-T in the back, and I didn't know I had those because it was like personal stuff. It wasn't like, I just put it aside. I shot BDP, my favorites, EPMD, Rakim. Who else was there? Ice-T had the cop car on stage.
Yeah.
I have all those. I have all the films still. I haven't shown anybody. I mean, I just showed Biz Marquis's birthday or something just went down, and I posted Biz and him on stage. So that's the first time I really shown those.
So were you shooting concerts as well? Was it something that you typically do, or every now and then?
No, I just did some live album covers.
Yeah. Because I see in the back we have a DMX.
DMX was live. He hired me to do his merch and publicity, and so I was in the pit, and I was like, cool, I'm in the pit, and they're like, just stay the whole time, and so I was able to get merch, and I set up something backstage. Jay-Z was backstage. I chopped it up with Jay-Z for a little bit. DMX's dressing room was just a mob scene, so I wasn't able to get any other, like studio looking shots. But we hung for a little bit. He's one of my favorite of all time, for sure.
So after all those years, the hip hop scene crashes, right? Or just the music industry gets hurt, right? You end up coming back. You end up doing more work because you start working with, I see in the back you have 21 Savage, right? You have Beagles, you have Offset back there, right? How did you get reintroduced? Because now, by now, all those, it's crazy, right? So we've got a little bathroom interruption here. I'm trying to really dry his hands properly. So you get back into, how'd you break back into, because everybody's probably gone from those positions. Those record labels don't exist. The A&Rs don't exist. Everybody's new.
It was a fight to get back in I'm working for Warner Brothers a lot now, and Interscope, and Rock Nation's been hiring me for a couple of their acts. Just worked with the Rock Nation like a couple weeks ago. I think my work speaks for itself. So sometimes when you show my portfolio to a new artist, they're like, "Oh yeah, that guy," or like they because Tupac is such a worldwide phenomenon that most people love him. Yeah. So it's like that's one way. Just social media has been a blessing for me because people can see. They can just look on Instagram and go, "Oh, this guy, okay, cool." So I'm getting put up for jobs. I don't always get them all. There's a lot of photographers out there still. Yeah. And yeah, it's just So like when Offset looked at my book, he was tripping out. He's like, "Holy shit, your book!" And 21 Savage's Mega Meezy was looking at my book, was tripping out as well. So like I put out a book in 2012, and it was called West Coast Hip Hop: A History in Pictures. And that had about 50 artists in it, and it was a lot of my work. And that book got me recognized, and people thought like 4 or 5 photographers were in that book, and I was like, no, it's all me. And I started doing shows, and now I'm in the Museum of Graffiti, or the Museum
of the Art of Hip Hop.
Art of Hip Hop.
So, and you're also in all these other shows that have been going around, and really important shows, and they've published some great books. So Contact High, A Visual History of Hip Hop, I mean, this was a pretty incredible photography.
Great idea,
Vicky. Great idea when Vicky put this out, and the book is sort of a wonderful book where you get to see a lot of the photography of you and all your peers.
Will Smith, 1990, and they're all my peers. There's some great people in here. What else is in here? And then I also did for Vicky this cover. We're about to open up the Natural History Museum May 8th. I just have the cover for this, and there's like...
It's a great cover, and it's a great title, Ice Cold. Yeah. But I think it's so strange that it's going to be in the Natural History Museum.
Because the jewels and minerals section.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
They definitely are tired of the dinosaur crowd, I think. And they want to get the hip hop crowd in there. I mean, the Natural History Museum doing a hip hop show is pretty wild. So I don't think anybody ever could have foreseen that.
No.
But no, I mean, Mike, you've done such an incredible job over the years with your work, sharing yourself to all these artists, putting yourself out there, and just capturing great images. Are you shooting film still? Are you shooting digital film? How do you mix it up?
Like for YG's cover, I shot digital, and then when the film came in, the cover was already done. So it happens all the time. So like Moneybag Yo, I shot film. Snot, I shot film. And I have just a couple rolls. I only shoot a couple rolls because, number one, people are impatient. Film takes time. You got to really, set it up, and it still takes a week, and they need it right away.
So I want to open it up to the audience. I mean, we have a lot of great folks here tonight, and some photographers in the house as well. And I want to, see if anybody had any questions that you wanted to ask Mike while we have him here. Yeah.
Mike, you've been doing this for like so long. You do it at such a high level. How do you still find something new to do, or like some new concept or something like that? Because I feel like you've done it all. Like, what else is there?
I used to think that back when I was, 10 years in, 15 years in. I was like, what am I going to do next? Now it's just a no-brainer. Now, I was shooting in Miami, and I found a purple house, purple cement. Everything is purple. You just got to go search it out. You try and loosen the person up because they're musicians. They're not into photography.
They're not models.
They're not models. So that's something I learned in Paris as well, how to see things with a different perspective.
Cool. Yeah.
So, Mike, you work with a lot of the most hardcore rappers out there, but you worked with the young Will Smith around 1990. What was that experience like? And did you see the star he was going to become while you were shooting him?
Yeah, I used to see him at the nightclubs. What was it called? Dragonfly in Silver Lake. And he'd be going up to girls yo, and just busting out raps. I'm like, hey, and so I saw him early on before the Fresh Prince. And he hired me to do a Code Red album cover, and I did the Best Of album cover. I think it's in there.
They're both up there.
They're up there, yeah. So yeah, I saw he had a spark, definitely had charisma.
Cool. And any other questions? Yeah.
Just curious, the House of Pain cover.
Yes.
Where was that? LA or somewhere?
Well, that cover, okay, that was in Silver Lake. I did their demo to get them signed, and I shot it in famous tattoo artist Mark Mahoney, and that's kind of where I hung out too, in the tattoo shops or clubs and meeting people. So I shot the demo, which is really stronger than that shot, and got him signed on Tommy Boy Records, and that was just in a field. I shot him with a Molotov cocktail out in Long Beach with all the oil wells and stuff. It was, I lit a rag with a bottle with a 40 ounce. It wasn't the real deal, but yeah. To hear music being, Easy played me 100 Miles and Running before it was released. And so I got to work with Easy a couple times. That was great.
What is your favorite shoe?
I was waiting for that question. The Lifers group in Rahway Prison was, on many levels, was like blew my mind. When I was a kid, there was a thing called Scared Straight, and you know, when we were younger, and so we saw these guys on TV doing life in prison and trying to scare us kids not to do, you know, naughty stuff, whatever. So not only, it happened so quick that I was already flying to Rahway, New Jersey, and so it was so surreal, like walking into like where the Scared Straight program is like the same dudes that I watched when I was a kid. So I walk in and like the warden was really weird, and he was like a character. Showed me all the weapons he confiscated. It's on the back cover, all the shanks and like the one shooters, and then I met the guys, and there was 22 guys on the cover, and it was they were actually really nice, and you know, I felt sorry for them. People still trip out when they look at those photos. They're just like, they're blown away. It's up here. Yeah. Lifers Group. I had the guards holding up the rifles, I remember, and there was 22 guys on the cover. So that was hard to capture that many people, meet them, get to know them, shoot it, and just the background story of me as a kid watching that program. It blew my mind. It was just so surreal being in there, yeah.
I mean, and you know, I think being in that environment.
It was heavy.
It's a heavy environment.
It was heavy. Yeah. There's a lot of weight to the photos.
Well, there's, you know, that's it. They're in there for life.
Yeah. And then it's like after that shot, they'd come up to me and like, oh yeah, and they'd tell me stories how they got in there. I'm like, holy fuck, like I didn't need to hear that, but I'll never forget it. Like, oh, I'm doing 2 life sentences, you know. I'm like, oh, congratulations, you know, like that's like so scary. They did some gnarly shit, so we chopped it up a little bit, and then I broke. Flew back to LA.
Any other questions? Yeah.
If you could leave any piece of information, something you learned from an artist, like somebody that you met along the way, what would it be to get to meet?
I would think someone like Coolio, you know, the times, the struggles, never give up, make it to the top, get knocked back down, get back up. He was probably, and Tupac, because he showed me that, you know, that anything's possible. I mean, to get that job was like a godsend. I was so lucky to get that job, and you know, you just never give up hope. When like, how do aren't you, when all your locations are done? And they're like, it's never done. It's like, you don't, I used to trip on like, am I gonna ever work again? And that was like, you know, 20 years ago. So now I just go, oh, something's gonna come along. You just gotta be patient and let God, you know, show you the way.
Any other questions, folks?
You say a lot of your photos, or most issues, you have to connect with someone before you take a picture. Have you ever had any shoots where there was no time to connect, or you couldn't connect, but you still got a good result, or the result always depends on the connection?
No, my first frame were covers. Many times, like Mac 10 right here, that was the 665 Polaroid negative, first frame. And that happened a lot. It happened recently with this guy, Joe. He said it on social media. He's like, this was the first frame on the roll. And that's, you know, I sometimes now with digital, you can be like, look, and they'll be like, oh shit, and then the day just flows. But no, I'll make sure I get it no matter what. And if it's not good, you know, right away, 20 years, it'll be great.
Who's an artist that you haven't worked with but are like really want to, that are alive?
Riri.
Like, who's an artist who you haven't worked with?
Riri.
What?
Rihanna.
Oh, Rihanna.
All I do is hear Rihanna on the she's a fan, of mine, but she loves Tupac as well. But an artist, I like J. Cole, if you want to talk about hip hop. I think J. Cole would be great. I've worked with a lot of people. Sometimes you get to a certain fame where they'll present my work to Cole, but I don't get the job because there's a lot of talent out there. So it's a lot. It's not easy, even with an archive. It's still, it's hit or miss. It's like back in the day, I got work from New York. I didn't meet the art directors. They'd put like 5 books down to the artist, and the artist would pick. And I'm up against like the top dogs in New York, so that's just life, and I'm not living in New York, so it was, I was, and I had 2 kids, and I'm living up in Topanga Canyon, like I said, and yeah, I was just like a hermit. I was isolating, not going out anymore. When I was going out, I was hooking up with, Booyah Tribe and Ice Cube and, all kinds of cool people. I just got lucky early on. I talked about my early career. I started building portfolios for models, and then the music industry got a hold of me. And when I was a kid, I used to flip through record stores and go, holy, like I used to be blown away by like Pink Floyd or Rolling Stones or Led Zeppelin, because hip hop wasn't around back then when I was a kid. And not in my wildest dreams, I thought I'd be shooting album covers. I didn't even know that was a job. Even when I started doing photos, I didn't know music you can, I guess I did, but I didn't really think about it. So.
Some of the photographers that you mentioned or other people that you might mentor.
There's a guy named Craig Stessex that was early on that was like just blew me away. Like on him, there's Joe Conzo, Ernie, Martha Cooper, Jamal Shabazz. There's some of those early guys. But who influenced me?
Or who you influenced, who you might have liked.
Oh, I don't know. I'm in a bubble, man. I don't even pay attention.
Did you take on some mentorees at the school?
Well, GB, he's been around. He's not mentor. Maybe. I mean, he was my assistant, and he also is an incredible director, filmer. I've been fortunate to have people like GB and Rick, and work with me. My early influence, I don't know that question, but my early influence was like Paolo Roversi from Italy. He had a real dreamy look to his film, and that's something that I try to capture. Javier von Hanrat early on.
Any other questions?
You have a favorite cover?
A favorite cover? I like Warren G's a lot because it was such a difficult cover to capture at the middle of the day. It was like the worst possible light. I shot it on film, obviously, 6.7. And I also like the Alcoholics. Through the freezer, we were going after the long day of shooting, we stopped at the liquor store, and I paid the cashier $50, and I went into the freezer and shot 2 rolls and done, and that was the cover. And then we shot them swimming underwater, going coast to coast. That was on a Santa Ana day, so that was pretty cool because I'm shooting with strobes underwater with film, Santa Ana day in the valley. It was like 90 degrees out, and I'm underwater, and to shoot underwater, you gotta exhale to sink. So to capture, it's on my carousel, on one of the recent carousels. If you look on Mike Miller Photo, it's my Instagram. There's a lot more though. I think I love them all, to tell you the truth. I like Quicks, Thug Life.
So you mentioned earlier that you did the Stussy shoot, of course. Have you ever been like contacted by other streetwear brands, like let's say like a Supreme or anyone else on the West Coast?
Well, Champion right here. The director is right behind here. We work together. Peace, Manny. I work with Puma. I worked with Nike early on. I worked with who else did I work for? probably a few more. I just can't. I'm pretty foggy in my brain. Getting old, man. I just turned 60.
Cool. So we're gonna wrap it up. I wanted to mention to everybody that Mike has been very generous and has created a poster with us. We have it. It is of a photo. Do you want to tell us about that image, Mike?
Sure. Okay, it's a car going over the First Street Bridge. California is really heavy in car culture. It's like I said about Arabian Princess back cover was my old Buick 64 Rag. So I just remember early on, like on Sundays, people would cruise their low rides around. And so I've always shot them. And this is on a Sunday afternoon. I knew they were going to a meetup and limited car club. I had it lined up with downtown, and I knew it was going to be a good shot. I was just waiting for the right car to come by. It was on 3-wheel motion. It's got an LA Dodger cap on. It's got LA. It's got it all. It's LA.
So we have that print. Mike has signed some in advance. If you guys would like a work from Mike, we have that. We also have these great books that Mike has work in, Ice Cold, Contact High, probably more. I'm not sure. You're out there.
Who knows?
And so everybody, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Mike, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. Once again, thank you so much to Jay Wakefield for hooking us up with beers tonight. We appreciate the great beer.